Hi team, it's Pippin here. Unfortunately, I can't show you my face, which is so happy to see you nonetheless, because I'm having a weird technical thing. Nonetheless, let's carry on and let's talk about mouse input. So, mouse input means hearing what the user's mouse is doing and kind of doing something in response, right? And if we switch over to the code, I've got a simple little program for drawing an ellipse on the screen. You know me, love to draw ellipses on the screen. It just sets up a little circle object with a position for the circle, and after creating the canvas and drawing the background, it draws the ellipse at its location. So if we look at that, we've got the usual thing, right? A circle in the middle of the screen. And we know that we've got these variables mouse X and mouse Y that always tell us what the location of the mouse is. So if I wanted, for example, to move the ellipse around so that it follows the mouse, I could set circle X to mouse X, and I could set circle Y to mouse Y, like that. And then when I go and look at my program, when I move the mouse around, hey presto, the circle follows, right? So we're pretty familiar with that basic idea. We also know that I could, for instance, just write mouse X here in the actual function call of the ellipse, and mouse Y here. I think that there is value, though, to having this kind of separation between those two things, right? This way, the way that the program's written, it's much, much clearer that the circle follows the mouse, and then we draw the circle as a separate concern. Both ways work. I think this way is better. We've also seen the variable mouse is pressed. That can tell us whether or not the mouse button is down. But the thing I want to actually talk about today are these mouse functions. Okay? So far with mouse X, mouse Y, and mouse is pressed, all of which are variables, they only tell us about things that are kind of continuous, right? Like whether or not the mouse is held down right now continuously, or where the mouse is right now continuously. But one of the most important things we end up doing in programming is reacting to specific things that happen as they happen, right? So a thing happens and we want to respond to it right away. For example, like the user clicking down on their mouse button. If we want to respond to that, we need to know that it happened at the exact moment that it happened, and then we need to do something to reply to it, respond to it. And those sorts of things, like the user pressing down their mouse button, in programming we call them events, an event. And the special thing that we can do with events is that we have specialized functions. So already we've seen these functions, right? The draw function on my screen here is a function that gets called every frame, and the setup function is another function that gets called once at the beginning of my program. Well, P5 provides us with other functions that get called at other specific times, such as when the mouse button gets pressed down. And a function like that is called an event handler. So let's actually just look at one of these things, okay? So if I wanted my ellipse to be drawn at the location of the mouse the moment it gets clicked there, I would use one of these functions. And the one we're going to look at is called mouse pressed. So function mouse pressed, we write it like this. And it has the same basic kind of structure as the other ones, right? So we can see that function setup is written this way, function, the name of the function, parentheses, and then curly brackets around the stuff that it does. Same thing for draw. So this one is called mouse pressed, and this is another one that P5 automatically knows about. Have to write it this way, mouse pressed, small m, big P. Same thing, followed by parentheses, and then followed by these curly brackets. And the big difference is that here, whereas in setup, we know that the create canvas will just be called right at the beginning of our program once. And we know that the stuff here inside draw, which redraws the background and draws our ellipse, that will be called over and over again every frame. The stuff that we do in mouse pressed is called exactly once whenever the mouse button gets pressed down, at that exact moment. Okay? So if, for example, we wanted to move our ellipse or circle to the location of the mouse when it gets clicked down, I could do the same thing that I was doing before in here, right? So I could set circle X to mouse X, and I could set circle Y to mouse Y. So unlike in draw, where this would mean that would happen, the circle would be repositioned every frame, and so it just kind of follows the mouse around as you wave it around. because I've now got it inside the mouse pressed function, it's only going to happen at the moment that I click. So let's go look at that behavior over here in the browser. So you can see that the circle starts off in the middle because that's just what circle X and circle Y are set to at the beginning. But if I move my mouse over here, and I'll tell you when I'm going to click again since you can't see that happen, and I say 1, 2, 3, click, then you can see that the circle is relocated to the mouse position at the moment that I clicked. So it kind of jumps across because we're setting circle X and circle Y to the mouse location when I click. So I can do the same thing. Click, it moves. Click, it moves. Click, it moves. Click, it moves. That is what an event handler is for. Okay? So let's go back and look at it. So it's a special function. It's got a special name. So we need to make sure that we write our event handlers from P5 exactly the right way. So the word function, the name of the event handler, this one is called mouse pressed because it gets called when the mouse is pressed. It needs these parentheses after it, and then it needs these curly brackets to surround the thing that it will do. The thing that it will actually do is kind of up to us though, right? In this instance, we're using it to move the mouse to a specific location, but clearly we're allowed to kind of do whatever we want. For instance, let's add a background variable. So let's have a background variable that's got a red, a green, and a blue. Green and a blue. We've done this before. And now when we draw the background, let's use that. So background.red, background.green, and background.blue. So we're using those three properties, which are all black, right? 0, 0, 0 means that this is going to be black. But now this means that we could control the background color in some other way. And we've seen instances where we, for example, might increase the red. If we wanted to, then we could, let's say instead of moving the circle, let's set those values to a random number. So background.red equals a random number between 0 and 255. So I'm picking a random red shade, and I'll do the same thing for the other two. Typos. Don't you love them? Also a random number between 0 and 255, and the blue, same thing. A random number between 0 and 255. So now this program means something else, right? Now the ellipse isn't going to move because we're not changing its x and y, but every time we press down the mouse, these background properties of the bg variable will be set to random numbers, and that means that when we get here, the background is going to be set to a different color. But remember, only if we click. So let's go back. So here's the default. It starts off with all of those things at 0, so we see black. But if I click, click, I get a new color, a random color. Click, a random color. Nice one too. Click, random color. Click, random color. Click, 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 click. So the program is able to respond to what I'm doing by executing the code at the exact moment that I click down the mouse. Obviously, that's super useful, and there's all kinds of things that we could potentially use that for. As I say in the lecture notes, there are a bunch of other things like mouse pressed that can respond to different sorts of things that happen with the mouse. So there's mouse pressed. That function always gets called whenever you press the mouse button down. There's mouse released. That's the same thing, except that it responds to when you let go of the mouse button. There's mouse clicked, which requires that you press down and then release. I would generally personally use mouse pressed or mouse released. There's double clicked, which will respond to when you double click the mouse. Mouse moved, mouse dragged, and mouse wheel. Now, mouse moved and mouse dragged are interesting, and so let's just take a quick look at those. So the mouse moved one is written like this, same basic idea. So now I've got a mouse moved function instead of a mouse pressed function. It does the same thing. It sets the background to a random color, but mouse moved gets called every frame that the mouse has moved. You probably could have imagined that for yourselves, huh? And that can create some interesting effects too if you want to react to mouse movement specifically. So you don't care if the mouse is not moving, and you do care if it is moving. Let's go look at the behavior of this program now. So now it's green. My mouse is not moving, so it stays green. If I move my mouse, I see flickering, right? Because every frame that my mouse is moving, a random color is being set. If I stop, then I end up on this nice green, move again, and it starts flickering again. So this is a different kind of behavior, right? It's not like something that's kind of as discrete feeling as a mouse click or a mouse pressed. but it is still utterly connected to the mouse. You can see that when the mouse doesn't move, that function is not being called. And if the mouse does move, then it gets called every frame. So it's like a special version of draw in a way, but it only draws if the mouse is moving. Mouse dragged, spelled like that, is the same thing, except it only gets called if the mouse is moving and the mouse button is held down. Okay? Let's go look at that. So if I move my mouse now, I'm moving it around, nothing is happening, it stays black. If I click down, nothing is happening because I'm not moving the mouse. But if I start moving while I'm holding the mouse button down, now I'm getting that flashing. And as soon as I stop moving, or as soon as I let go of the mouse, then it freezes. That's a very nice blue that we ended up on. Okay, mouse wheel, I'll let you take a look at for yourself, but it's a similar idea except that it gets called every time that the mouse wheel moves. And I've got an example of that in the lecture notes under the too much information section. You're welcome to read that. This is the basic idea though, right? This is what event handlers are all about. I'll go back to mouse pressed, is that they're a special function, just like setup and draw, and they get called at a specific moment for you so that you can respond, in this instance, to the mouse. And in another video, we can talk about the keyboard as well. This idea, this bigger idea of event handling functions is a really, really important one to get used to. Just remember that the key idea is that you have a special function and it gets called when something happens. So it's not always being called, and you don't need to call it yourself. It gets called at the moment that a specific thing happens, and that's very useful in programming. Okay, so that's event handlers, and in this instance, we've talked about event handlers specifically for the mouse. And that is all that we're going to talk about for today in the world of mouse input. I will see you in the next video. Bye for now. I wish that you didn't see this, but you did. Look, you're looking into the abyss. Try not to get scared. Bye.